Hi there, it's Jesse from Jess-Inspired. Alright, today I'll be building this beautiful landing page which you see right here from frontendmentor.io. It's the Sunnyside Landing Page challenge, and I'll be showing you how I build this using just pure HTML5, CSS3 and vanilla JavaScript. So quickly, let me just show you the features of this web page. Alright, so right here I have my nav bar, which you see this beautiful hover effect when I hover over them, over my nav links, and then I'm just going to scroll down right now. And then I'm going to show you these learn more buttons which you see right here. I have this beautiful hover effect, so when I hover over them, and then I also have my footer which you see right here, and then I have this my social media icons which you also see right here, and have my my layout as a beautiful interplay of grid and flex. Alright, so this is totally responsive. Alright, so let me just show you the responsiveness of this site quickly. Alright, so realize that if I resize my screen, you see how everything sort of responds, and then realize that at smaller viewports I have this hamburger menu button pop up. Alright, and then I can click on it, and then my nav card slides in from the top and then slides back up. And then we also see that this other my main section has this single column row which you see right here, layout rather. So everything looks good. Now basically this tutorial or this project will be divided into 4 parts. The first part will have this hero section which you see right here, and that's what we'll be doing right now. And then other ones will have, the second one will have this main section from transform your brand, everything you're seeing right here up till right here, just the whole main section. And then the third section will have from here the testimonial which you see right here, the client testimonial section, down to the footer right here. And then the fourth section will have the little JavaScript which you're going to see right here. So this little JavaScript will create this nav card, and then to click on it and on click event, so that when I click on it, it sort of toggles this nav card. Alright, so quickly let me just jump right into VS Code and show you how I made this. Alright, so I'm in VS Code right now, which you can see here, right here on the left of my screen. And then basically I'm just going to show you my setup. Alright, so my setup has basically my index.html. Let me show you my folder. I have my index.html in my root folder, and then I have my JS folder which also has a script.js which you see right here. I have my img, that's my img folder, basically has all the images that I got from frontendmentor.io for this challenge. And then I have my CSS folder, and in it I have just one file which is my styles.css, and all the styles we'll be using for this project will be inside my styles.css. So everything looks all good. So quickly let me just jump right into my HTML. So first things first, I'm just going to create this boilerplate templates, and then I'm going to write Sunnyside Landing Page. Sunnyside Landing Page, just like that. And then what's next is that I like to design my HTML, write my HTML with a wrapper. Alright, so it sort of gives me control over all the elements in my page. So I'm just going to wrap it in a div. I'm going to call it wrapper. And then because we are building just this section for now for this project, I'm going to be naming the section hero section. Alright, hero section, just like that. So section.hero section. Alright, so I have my hero section. Now my hero section, I want it to have this nav bar which you're seeing right here. So I have this nav bar, and then I also want it to have this we are creative text which you see right here, and then this arrow. I want this to be wrapped in like a div. Alright, and then I want my nav elements to be wrapped in a nav element. So I want basically my hero section to have 2 children. Number 1 is the nav, and then number 2 is this intro, and the intro comprises of this text and the arrow. Alright, so let me show you what I mean right now. So basically I'm just going to write nav.nav. So I'm going to create a nav element with the class of nav, and then I want it to have the first child of it. I want it to be this Sunnyside which you see right here, and this Sunnyside is not actually a text, it's actually an image. Alright, so I'm going to get that image right now from my folder. So image, I'm going to give it the class of logo, and then let me just write img. So that's the name of the file, just in case you don't understand that. Img right here. So I'm just going to write img, and then the name of that picture, that image is logo.svg right there. So I'm going to give it an alternate text of logo, just like that. Alright, so I've been able to achieve that. Next I want to create my nav bar rather, or my primary nav. Alright, so I'm going to wrap these guys, this is my nav links, in a div, and I'm going to call it primary nav, PRINAV, just like that. And then I want it to be 8 tags, because these are probably links, these are links in reality. So I'm just going to give them 8 tags. All right, I want them to have a class of nav-links, just like that, and then I want 4 of them. All right, so 4. So let me just quickly type in this. I'm going to pause my video for now to type this so I don't waste your time. All right. Alright, so I've been able to type this in right now, which you can see. So I have my primary nav and then I have my nav links, which you see right here. So all of them are 8 tags with a class of nav links. So everything looks good for now. And then if you realize that as smaller viewports, I have this hamburger menu button pop-up, which I'm also going to include in my nav element. So I'm just going to write, because it's also an img, it's also an image. So I'm going to write image. I'm going to give it a class of ham menu button. And don't worry, we're not going to be using it for now because we're going to hide it to display as smaller viewports. All right, but for now I'm just going to write img.hamMenu button. All right, so the source will be img/icon hamburger because that's the name of the file. So I'm going to save it just like that. So everything looks all good. Now before I open up my CSS to style this, actually I will need to link my CSS in my HTML. So I'm just going to write a link and then I'm going to write CSS styles.css. So just like that. So right now if I implement my style right here in my styles.css, it's going to sort of style what I have right here in my markup. So let me launch this with live server. So launch with live server, open with live server. Okay, just like that. All right, so I have my page right here open with live server, which is a Sunnyside Landing Page, and then everything I typed in here, it's what's reflecting here in my browser. So I'm using Chrome. So basically you can use any browser of your choice, but right now let me hop into my styles.css and begin to style this. Now basically before I start styling my CSS, I believe that the first things that I do is that I like to use my universal selector and then set some defaults right on my page. So I want a default margin of 0 on all my elements. So this is a universal selector. So basically any style you put within this code block will affect every element on this page. All right, so I'm going to set by default, I want all the margins to be 0, I want all the paddings to be 0. I want my list style type, just in case I have some list on my page, I want it to be none. All right, I want my text decoration for everything to be none. Right now you can see a default underline text decoration on my link. So I want by default, I want it to be none. So everything looks good for now. So I'm going to save this. So everything looks good, isn't it? So right now you can't see the logo and the hamburger menu button I imputed right here in my HTML because they are white and the background is white. So right now I'm just going to hop into my hero section. All right, so hero section, and let me change the background, because if I change the background from white to blue, which you have here, and mind you, what you have right here, this orange sort of is actually an image. Okay, it's actually an image, the orange background which you're seeing right here, sorry, the blue background with this orange sort of semicircle which is here, it is actually an image. So I'm just going to go right here to my hero section right here. So I'm going to say give it a background. Now I'm doing this so you can just see basically the nav bar and the logo. So you can follow up what I'm doing. So background, so this is a shorthand for background image, background repeat, and all of that. So you can read about it, background property. And I'm just going to write a URL function, and I'm going to specify the path of my image. So it's in the image folder, in the desktop folder. The desktop folder is in the image folder, and then the name of the image is image header, just like that. So I'm also going to specify a value of no repeats, just in case it repeats on larger screen. So here we go. So we have our Sunnyside, we have our logo showing up right here, we have our nav links, we have our hamburger menu button, just like that. One thing I want to do is that for now I want to hide my ham menu button, you understand, so that it should show up only on smaller screen sizes when I set my breakpoints. I'm just going to set a display of none to that, so everything looks good for now. So having done this, let me share what I believe is a best practice. I have a bunch of colors which I'll be specifying, which was given to us by frontendmentor.io, and some I also found out by looking at the original design. And then I also have some specific font sizes that were also given to us from frontendmentor.io. Now if you look at the font family, not font sizes, actually font family that was specified here or that was used here, you realize that this is not the default font family which you have right here in your CSS by default. These were imported from Google Fonts, and I'm going to show you how to do that right away. But first things first, I want to specify my colors, and I believe that some of the best practices to use in HTML for specifying colors and some other properties is by declaring them as variables. So right now I'm just going to copy and paste a bunch of variables which I have, and I'm going to explain to you what I did. Alright, so right now you see these variables which are right here. Now basically what this does is that I'm able to give custom names to some specific values. For example, I have this HSL, this color right here, which is a custom white. I have a bunch of other colors right here. I'm able to give custom names by declaring them as variables. And the implication of this is that in my code, I don't need to start rewriting all these color codings right here. I can just specify the name and it will reference this. All right. So, and the joy of that is that every time if I want to change, for example, I have like 3 elements or 4 elements, multiple elements on my page that have these values as their color values. For example, instead of me changing each of their values, I can specify them to have, for example, I'm using this one, for example, a color of learn more software, the variable of learn more software. So if I do this, I can simply come back here to my root selector, which is this, and that's where I specify variables. They are specified in your root selector. All right, so you come right here to your root selector. After your root selector represents the HTML element, which is this, all right, on your HTML, on your markup. So you could just come right here and change the value of learn more software, and it will just automatically affect every element that you give that value. All right, so pretty good, isn't it? So that's how you do this. So the next thing we're going to do is that I want to show you how to import fonts from Google, because it's part of our setup. So I need to show you how to import the fonts that we'll be using for this project. So quickly, make sure you have data, and then come right to your favorite search engine, or you could just come right here to where you input your URL and type in fonts.google.com, just like this, fonts.google.com. So I'm just going to click enter. Alright, so you should have something like this. I have mine on dark mode. You could switch to light theme, but I prefer dark theme. Alright, so you should have something like this. Let me maximize my screen so you see it better. So come right here to search fonts. I'll be using 2 basic fonts for this project. The first of them is the Barlow font, Barlow, B-A-R-L-O-W. Alright, so once I search, it has this auto update, so it sort of gives me the what I'm looking for. So I have a bunch of Barlow fonts, but I'm going to use the first. I'm just going to click on this, and then okay, it's opening. The next thing you have to do is that you need to specify the style. All right, so Barlow is the font family. Now we want to specify the style. All right, so I want about 4 styles. I want light 300, and this is light 300. We also have light 300 italic. All right, so we have this italic light 300, but I don't want my text to be in italics. All right, so I could also specify 400. I think from frontendmentor.io we also give in a width of say 600. All right, so I'm going to select this style. So I've been able to select the Barlow style. Now the next font family that was specified in our frontendmentor.io was Frances. All right, so I'm just going to write Frances. All right, so I'm just going to click on this Frances. So for Frances, I'm going to be choosing the font weight of 700, and 900. All right, and 900. So having done this, the next thing that you want to do is that you want to come right here, which you see this icon, view your selected families. Okay, view your selected families. So you click on it, and then you see all the styles that you specified. You see the Barlow. If I click on this drop down, you see all the font families that you specified. The styles that you specified for each font family will be displayed in these drop downs. Okay, so having done this, the next thing that you want to do is that you want to come right here to where it says imports. Okay, so imports right here, import. So there are 2 basic ways to actually embed this in your code. The first way is by using this link. The second way is by using @import, and this is inserted in your CSS. So I prefer to use this one, so I'm just going to use this right now. So I'll click on this radio button, import. All right, then the next thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to copy this code right here. So from @imports right here, I'm going to copy this like this. Just copy it like this. Okay, Control C. Then I'll go right into my CSS. Okay, and I'm going to place it above everything in my cascade. All right, I'm going to place it above this root selector, which you see. So I'm going to place it above it. So Control V at the top, just like that. Okay, so right now we have our font family. We can now access this in our CSS. Okay, so I'm going to save this right now. So everything looks good for now. All right, so let me divide my screen so you see it better. So I'm going back to my code. So the next thing I want to do is that I want to specify my font families as variables because I find them easily accessible. So I'm just going to write here font variables, and then next I'm just going to write let me call this, for example, the first one, let me call it the body font. All right, so this is how you write variables. You write them, so you put these two hyphens, you write the name of the variable. You could choose whatsoever name you like. These names were chosen by me at random, but choose any name that you can easily remember. And then the next thing you want to do is that you want to put this colon, and after the colon you specify the value. All right, and then you end it with a semicolon, just like that. So now I'm going to write body font, but how do I get the name of the font exactly? I'll need to come back right here to my Google, and then I'm going to come to the bottom, which you see right here. Okay, so I'm going to come to the bottom right here, and I'm going to copy for the body, because we'll be using this Balu font. So I'm just going to copy Balu like this, copy. I'm going to paste it right here. Okay, the next thing I want to write, I want to give the other guy header font. I want to call it the name of, and give it the name of header font. So I'm giving it the name of header font because basically most of the headers on this page uses this Frances font. So We Are Creatives has this font on it. Transform Your Brand has this font on it. Stand Out to the Audience, Right Audience has this font on it. Basically, so even this client testimonials also has. So basically, I'm just going to call it, because of that, I'm going to call it header font. All right. So I'll come right here to my my font families, and I'm going to copy this from Google Fonts, copy, and I'm going to paste it right here, just like that. Okay, so everything looks good for now. Okay, so coming back to my code, so everything looks good for now. Now so I've been able to write my hero section. So let's come back right here. Let's come right here to my hero section. Now you realize that my image, my background doesn't look anything like this. So next thing what I want to do is that I want to make this my background come out the way it is right here in this model which I'm working with. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to give this a height of 100 VH. All right, so if I do this and I save this, you see that I have this large screen, and then it doesn't necessarily show up like this because there are some properties I still need to set. So I'm just quickly going to set, and mind you, I'm going to come back to work on this height of 100 VH to have more control over our layout. But for now, I'm just going to leave it at 100 VH so that you can see what we are trying to achieve. So the next thing I want to do is that I'm going to set the background size. So I wanted to have 100% width and 100% height. Okay, so that's done. 100%. So it's beginning to take shape. The next thing I want to do is that okay, so everything looks good for now. I'm going to come back right here, but first things first, what's next is that I want to work on this my nav bar for now. All right, so I'll come back to the hero section later. So nav, I'm just going to give it a display of flex. So if I do that, everything aligns in its horizontal direction. Then next, I want to give the justify content of space between. All right, so it looks good. Let me also give it an align items of center, so everything sort of centers. You see, everything sort of centers right here vertically. So everything looks good for now. Then let me work on this my primary nav. All right, so I'm going to work on my primary nav, but first things first. Okay, let me write primary nav. Let's work on that. Now, just in case you're having issues as to where I'm getting these names from, remember I specified them right here in my index.html. As the parent of these nav links is called primary nav. It has a class of primary nav, and each of the links have a class of nav link. So that's what I'm working with. All right, so I'm going to come back right here. So primary nav. I also want this guy to have a display of flex. Okay, so I want it to have a display of flex. I'm going to touch that very soon, but for now, let me just style the nav links. Let me style the nav links for now. So I'm just going to write nav links. I want to change this blue color, so I'm just going to write color. I'm going to give it a color with a variable. So I'm going to specify a variable because I already wrote the color up there. So var y. So this is the syntax for specifying the variables, for referencing them. So you have this var keyword, and then you have this parenthesis, and then the name of the variable right here, just like I have. And then once you click save, it's going to show up right here as as what you specify. So everything looks good. Then I'm going to specify the font family for my nav links, all right, to be var. I want it to be the body font, all right, so body font. So once I do that, it's also going to change, all right. So everything looks good for now. Having done this, you realize that this my contact button has a different font from all of them, and also a different color. So I'm going to style the contact button right now. So in order to do that, I'm going to come right here to my index.html. I'm just going to give this guy an added class of contact button, just like that, contact button. All right, so I'm going to copy this, right, and then get back to my styles.css. Then I'm going to paste it right here. Okay, paste. So everything looks good. So I'm going to give this guy a color of let me use the font family first. A font family of let me say var header font, so it looks good. So I have my header font right there. Then you realize that also by default it has some color on it, and I'm also going to give it that color. So I think that color is font family, color of var dark grayish blue. I think that's the color, dark grayish blue, if I'm not mistaken. Dark grayish blue. I think it's very dark grayish blue, very dark grayish blue. Okay, so that's the right color. All right, so if I save this, and just to recap, in case you're worried about where I got these values from, is what I specify right here. So I have very dark grayish blue to have this color of HSL 2139% and 39%, which you have right there. So everything looks good for now. Let me just sort of copy this guy and take it back to the top so it doesn't interfere in my cascade. All right, I want my code to be clean. Okay, I'm just going to put it right here. All right, so let me also comment this because I believe it's good practice to write hero section so that people can really easily understand my code. So everything looks good. So I've been able to do that. Now next thing, I realized that I have spaces between this my nav links, and then you realize that this nav this contact has this default white background over it. So I'm also going to do that, and then I'm also going to put some paddings inside so that I can have spaces. All right, so I'm going to come to my contact button. It has a background color, all right, of var white, just like that. So everything looks good, but realize that there are no spaces, and it has this square sort of border. So I'm going to work on that right now. So I'm going to add some paddings, all right, to my nav links. So I'm going to give it at the top a value of 0.5 rem at the top, and at the bottom of 0.5 rem, and then 1.5 rem at the sides. Okay, so let me see. So I think that works. Okay, so for now I think this works. So I have these spaces between them because of the paddings. I'm going to touch that next. I'm going to touch my nav links next, but for now realize that these my nav links are basically at the top of my page, and I don't want that. So I'm also going to set some paddings and realize that these my nav items, they are the extreme, all right, of my page, at the extreme left, at the extreme right, and also at the top. All right, so I want to touch that right now. So I'm just going to come right here to my primary nav. Okay, and I'm going to give it that's my nav, not my primary nav, because my primary nav basically has to do with just these guys. Okay, so I'm going to come to my nav. I'm going to give it some padding. All right, so I'm going to give it a padding of 2 rem at the top. I want to give it 1 rem at the right. I want 0 at the bottom. I also want 1 rem at the left. So once I do that, we have something like this. So it looks good for now. And having done this, I also want to give this my nav links. Okay, so I'm coming back to my nav links. I want to give it a border radius. All right, so I want it to have a border radius of something like 3 rem. So I have this curve right here. Okay, so you see that my border right now is a little bit rounded, so everything looks good for now. So having done that, I want to add some hover effects, which I have right here over my nav items. Okay, so in order to do that, I'm just going to write over my nav links rather. So I'm just going to come right here to my nav links, and I'm just going to write nav links just like that, and then I'm going to give you this hover pseudo class. So I want to change the background color when I hover over it. Okay, so that's what I want to do. And I have this color which I sort of worked out. I saw the original work that was given to us from frontend and then I was able to come out with this color 208 231 240 0.521. Okay, so that's the color we'll be using. So when I hover over it, it should have this color. Alright, so right now I realize that the color is showing up, but there is no transition effect on it. So I'm going to put a transition so that it sort of has that smooth transition into it. So 0.2 seconds, ease in and out. Alright, so I'm going to put it right here on the hover. I'm also going to put it in the nav link selector right here. So that's good. So you see that I have this little transitioning effect when I hover over it. So everything is looking good for now. Now the next thing I want to do is that I want to let's work on these guys. All right, so I have this we are created and then this arrow right here, and I'm going to come right here to my index.html, and then right here that's below the nav, because I don't want it to be a child of the nav. I want it to be a different div. So I'm just going to write here dot hero intro. All right, so intro. All right, so that's good. Now the next thing I want to do is that basically let me give this guy a header. Let me call it a header, not a div. So I'm just going to write header dot hero header. All right, so there's a header tag in HTML, so basically defines this whole section right here, the text and this arrow which you're seeing right here. So next I'm going to write the h1, and I'm going to write hero header, give it the class of hero header, and I want it to have as a content in it, we are creatives. We are creatives. So that looks good for now. So if I save it, you're going to see right here, we are creatives. Okay, so that's good. The next thing I want to do is that I want to add this arrow, and I told you this arrow is an image. So I'm just going to right here in my index.html, I'm going to write img. I'm going to give it the class of hero arrow down, just in case we need to style it. I like to work with my class selectors. Okay, so image hero arrow down, good. Then I'm going to write img. Then I'm just going to look for that arrow. Where are you? Good. Okay, so once I save this, okay, my arrow shows up, so everything looks good for now. I'm going to come right here back to my CSS. So I want to style this now, and how am I going to achieve this? So first things first, let me work on the text, or let me center it first. So in order to center it, I'm just going to come right here, then I'll write hero intro. All right, because that's the parent class. Hero intro, I wanted to give it a display of grid, and just in case you're not conversant with grid, basically if there's any part of this code you find a little bit challenging to understand, make sure to drop a comment so I can start preparing myself to do videos for you. All right, because it's all about you, isn't it? So for now, I'm just going to declare a display of grid, and I'm going to give it a justify items of center. So once I do that, okay, that didn't work. All right, so I was expecting that to work. It didn't work. So let me go back to my HTML. All right, so that's the mistake. I wrote this hero intro right here because I just presumed that the parent class was hero intro. Remember, it was hero header, and I also gave this class of hero header to be creative. So I'm just going to change this guy right now to hero intro. All right, so watch out for that. Okay, so once I do that, okay, my code is working pretty fine. All right, so everything seems good for now. The next thing I want to do is that let me work on this my hero header right here. So I'm just going to copy this hero header, copy you, and I'm going to paste you right here. All right, paste, good. Then I'm going to give this guy a text transform of uppercase. So uppercase. All right, so we have a beautiful uppercase right here, text, and I'm going to give it a color of var white, which you have right there, white. So it looks like this. Next, I want to change the font family. font family, I want it to have var header font. So we see that it looks like this right now. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is that I want to also specify the font size. Okay, so the font size, and I'm going to work on this font size later so it creates fluid typography, but for now I'm just going to give it the font size of 3 rem, but we're going to come back to it for now. We're going to come back to it later rather. Then I'm going to give it the letter spaces. Now realize that even though I have this guy and I have the same font family and seemingly the same font size, you realize that this guy has some spaces sort of between every letter. So I want spaces between my letters. So how do I do that in CSS? I'm just going to write letter spacing, which you're seeing right here. So if I have letter spacing and I have something like 0.45 rem, so you see that it looks like this. All right, it looks like this. Okay, so everything seems to be working well, just that I need this extra space. I need spaces between my navbar and this my hero intro, which you see right here, and I also need spaces between this my hero header and then this arrow. All right, so first things first, I'm going to work on this guy. Now there are a bunch of ways to do this, but one way that I find pretty easy to work with is by if I come to my hero section right here and I give this guy display of flex, for example, or flex, and I give it a flex direction of column. Now I can give it some row gaps. All right, so that's a very good way to work in my opinion. So I can give it, for example, a row gap of 6 rem, and you see what's going to happen. I'm just going to have spaces. You see this, so everything looks good for now. So I've been able to achieve this kind of space right here by simply declaring this a display of flex and a flex direction of column, and now I can manipulate it using the row gap. All right, so I'm going to change this later using a clamp function, which I'll show you later, but for now I'm just going to specify 6 rem. The next thing I want to work on the spaces between this text, which you see right here, this text and this arrow. All right, so that's what I want to do right now. So these guys belong to this parent, and the parent is hero intro, which you see right here. Now because it already has a display of grid, row gap can also work right here. I can also put this row gap property, and then I could give the row gap property, for example, a value of something like 4 rem. I'm going to touch this later, but for now I'm just going to give you 4 rem so you get a picture of what I'm saying. So everything looks good for now, isn't it? So we have a beautiful design, so everything is looking good for now. Now let's work on the responsiveness of this page. Okay, so let me hover over this. So if I hover over this looks good, everything looks good. Now let me sort of make my screen and then maximize my screen. So if I begin to hover over this, rather if I resize my screen, and just in case you don't know how to do that, I'm just going to right click and you click inspect, or you just simply use the shortcut Ctrl Shift I. So if I do that, realize that okay, looks a little bit messy. All right, so this is better. So if I resize my screen, realize that when this guy wraps, all right, it's not wrapping, it's wrapping at the edge. All right, it's not wrapping at the center. So there's a reason for that. I need to specify right here in my hero intro, right? Is it my hero intro? I think so. Or my hero header. I think it's in my hero header. Yes, because that's the one that's not wrapping the way I want it to wrap. So I'm going to give this guy a text align of center. All right, so just in case it wraps, I want it to align at the center just like this. So everything looks good for now, so it's wrapping well. Also, another thing is that I don't want this guy to get to the extreme before it wraps. Okay, so I can put some paddings, all right, at this at the hero intro. So if I put some padding at the right and at the left of like 0.8 rem, if I resize my screen, it wouldn't need to get to the extreme before it wraps. So there's just going to be a gap of 0.8 rem. So when it gets there, it's no more getting to the extreme. I don't know if you noticed that. So it's not getting to the extreme right here before it wraps. It will hit that boundary of 0.8 rem on the right and on the left, and then it wraps. So everything looks good for now. All right, so I'm still having a basic challenge of my page. And another thing is that since I set the height to 100 VH, if I scroll my screen like this, if I resize my screen vertically, you realize that if I try to scroll up, the overflow I'm having an overflow of a blank page, of this blank white page. All right, so that's the kind of overflow I'm having, but I don't want something like that. I want it to be that if by any reason I have an overflow, I still want this my image, I still want everything to flow. Okay, so maybe that doesn't make sense. Let me just show you what I mean. So right now I'm just going to come right here to my hero section, and instead of giving it a height of 100 VH, I'm going to introduce something called a clamp function. All right, so just in case you find this a little bit challenging, just please do well to drop a comment for me. But like I said, any part of this lecture, of this project you find challenging, just drop a comment for me so that I can know what videos to do for you next. Okay, so this clamp function accepts 3 arguments. Number 1 is the minimum value, so I'm just going to write a 35 rem, a minimum value of 35 rem, a maximum value of 100 VH, sorry, not a maximum value, a middle ground of 100 VH, which is the second argument, and then the third argument is the maximum value of 40 rem. Now what this means is that it's going to check, once it wants to specify the value of the height, it's going to check these 3 values. All right, so it's going to start with 100 VH and say, okay, is 100 VH greater than 40 rem? So if 100 VH is greater than 40 rem, it's going to have this 40 rem, it's going to use this 40 rem. If 100 VH happens to be less than 35 rem, it's going to stop at 35 rem. It's not going to get smaller than 35 rem. So this 35 rem is the minimum value of my height, this 40 rem is the maximum value of my height, and then this 100 VH is like the middle ground. So it's going to use this if this is between these 2 boundaries. Now let me show you an application in my code. So for example, if I resize my screen, all right, so at some point you realize that it's no more becoming smaller. All right, it's no more becoming smaller because it's fixed at 35 rem. Now it means that I can scroll down, and if I scroll down, I still see my background picture scrolling. All right, so it's overflowing on my page. That's why I have this scroll on the y direction. Okay, so I've been able to achieve that right now. And the next thing I want to do is that I want to also work on my font size, because I want my font the font size of this my header to also be fluid. And one way to create fluid typography in CSS is by using this simple clamp function. Okay, so I'm just going to come right here to my hero header, and I'm going to introduce this clamp function. Now instead of specifying a font size of 3 rem, I'm going to write clamp, and these values I worked on them before now, so that's how I managed to arrive at them. They're not like standard values, they are things I worked on and I found to be suitable for this project. Okay, so I'm going to give it a minimum of 1.55 rem. 1.55 rem. So what it means is that our font size would not go below 1.55 rem, no matter how I resize my screen. I'm going to give this guy a font size of 9.1 VW plus 0.3 rem, and I'm going to give this guy a maximum of, this is a middle ground, and I'm going to give this guy a maximum of 3 rem. All right, so now what this means is that if I resize my screen, okay, if I resize my screen, realize that at some point my font size begins to also is also become smaller. I don't know if you noticed that. So it's becoming smaller. If I expand my screen, it also grows. All right, and then it grows to a particular point, and then it stops. Okay, so let me just show you something, just in case I never put the clamp function, and maybe I put something like by default I wanted my font size to be something like let me say 9 VW. So I want it to scale with my width. So right now it's 9 VW. If I expand my width, it will grow without ceasing. All right, and if I reduce my width, it will also shrink without ceasing. But if I put on the clamp function, it's going to grow to a particular point, and it can't exceed the maximum value. Okay, so it sort of places a clamp, all right, or a boundary on my font size. So it can get small, but no matter how small it gets, it can't get smaller than 1.55 rem. All right, so it's going to be there, it's not going to get smaller, and it can get big, but no matter how big it gets, it can't get bigger than 3 rem. Okay, so that's basically what the clamp function does. Now I've been able to achieve some level of fluid typography right now in my hero header. Now the next thing I want to work on is the spacing between my arrow and this hero header. All right, so I'm also going to use a clamp function. Okay, so instead of specifying right here a row gap of 4rem, I'm going to put a clamp function, clamp. Now I'm doing this because I don't want to write lots of media queries. Okay, so this helps me write my code without using lots of media queries. All right, it makes my code easier to read and easier to maintain. Okay, so I'm just going to give it a clamp function of 2.5 rem. That's the minimum, 7VW as the middle ground, and then 4rem as the maximum. So it has 7. It first of all works with this 7VW and checks if it is lower than 2.5 rem or if it is greater than 4rem. Just the same thing I explained for the other one. So it's basically the same principle. And also in my hero section, instead of using a row gap of 6rem, which is a little bit static, I'm also going to use a clamp function right here for my row gap. All right, so I'm going to give it a clamp of 4rem, maximum 12 Vmax. Now Vmax basically means the maximum of the viewport unit, so it's going to calculate between the viewport height and the viewport width and choose the one that is maximum and then specify it. All right, so and I'm going to give it the maximum of 6rem. So once I do this, you realize that I'm going to have a much more fluid page. Okay, so everything is beginning to look better now. Okay, all right, so I'm not seeing much changes. Okay, let me see something. Okay, what's next is that I'm going to make sure that at some setting at a particular viewport, this guy right here, I'm going to make this guy to have a display of none so that I can have a much more responsive layout. Okay, because if I resize my screen, you realize this unnecessary overflow I'm having right here, so it sort of messes up my layouts. So I'm going to make sure that this doesn't work. So I'm going to give it at 639 px. I want to implement what's it called, a media query. Okay, so I'm going to come right here to my CSS. I'm just going to write responsive design. All right, so I'm going to write responsive hero section, responsive hero section. All right, so having done that, I'm going to write at media screen and max width of 639 px. I want my primary nav to have a display of none. Okay, all right, so having done that, I want my what's it called, my home menu button, I want it to have a display of flex. Okay, so right now everything seems to be working well. So like I said, if I resize my screen, you see this guy show up, right? So at widths higher than 639 px, I'm gonna have my primary nav show up with my nav links, and if I resize my screen to widths lower than what's it called, 639 px, which I specify right here in my CSS as my breakpoint. So these are called breakpoints. All right, so once I do that, realize that it's gonna sort of have a display of none, but realize that, all right, so everything looks good, just that at some dimensions you realize that I'm beginning to have some hiccups in my layout, which you're seeing right here. So you see this is my arrow, the tail of my arrow is at the tip of this orange semicircle, which you have right here, unlike what I have right here where the arrow is somewhat at the middle of the semicircle. So I'm going to show you how to rectify this, because I always want my design to be consistent, you know, maybe not perfect, but at least consistent in all viewports and all orientations. All right, so and basically that's the idea, that's the basic idea of responsive design. So I'm going to show you how to achieve this using just one line of media queries. Okay, so what am I going to specify? I'm going to specify two things. Number one, I'm going to specify if I have an orientation of landscape, because if you realize at portrait mode, portrait basically means that my width, which you see right here, is less than my height, or my height is greater than my width. All right, so this is what portrait mode means. But at landscape, it means that my my width is greater than my height, which I have right here. So if my width is greater than my height, it can be said that I'm in landscape mode. Okay, so that's one condition I'm going to specify. And then next, I'm going to also specify that if my height is less than 600 px. Now I'm just going to show what I mean and how I arrived at these values. If I resize my screen to anything is at 635, and please just notice where it's being resized. So if I'm resizing the height, the value here is going to be changing, because this is the field that specifies my height right here. So if I resize my height to something less than like 600 px, you realize that my design begins to get much more different than what I have right here. All right, so I'm going to specify two things. Number one, an orientation of landscape. Number two, a max height of 600 px. All right, and then what I'm going to say is that if I hit these two conditions, I want my row gap between my navbar and this hero intro to be reduced. Okay, so quickly, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, I'm going to show what I mean in CSS. So I'm just going to add an extra media query. I'm going to write at media screen, and this time I'm going to write at orientation landscape. All right, so just like that, and I'm going to write and max width of 600 px. 600 px. Okay, so that looks good for now. And then what's going to happen, I'm going to write my hero section. I'm going to put some row gap. I'm going to reduce the row gap, so I'm going to have a clamp right here. All right, to sort of control it for me. So it's going to have a minimum of 3 rem, a middle ground of 6 vmax, and then a maximum of 7 rem, just like that. So once I do that, realize what's going to happen. This guy is going to shift. So even if I resize my screen, okay, let me see. Okay, sorry, I put max width here. It's meant to be max height. Okay, max height. Okay, max height. So if I resize my screen to make it smaller, it's not going to go lower than this value which I specified here, a row gap of 3 rem. Okay, so it sort of controls my layout, it sort of controls my design, so I have this consistency in all viewports. So if I resize my screen, it still looks good. If I resize it like this, it still looks good. If I resize it vertically, it still looks good. So everything still looks good. So that's the basic idea of responsive designs, that your site is able to render consistently in all viewports. So that's how you design this landing page. I hope you enjoyed this. So probably if you felt I overwrote something and you feel you have a shorter way to do it, please go ahead and drop your comments in the comment section. Okay, and if you feel like maybe there was something that I explained that you did not understand carefully and you want me to do a separate video on it, please also go ahead and also let me know in the comment section. And then if you're new here, please make sure you subscribe, okay, for more enlightening content like this, and feel free to like also, and then to share my videos. Okay, so thanks for watching, and until we see next time, remember, web dev isn't hard after all.